actually quite thrilled that you're here and that you have an interest in the Enneagram. Jenna is going to open us up with prayer. We just needed to set up another table real fast, and that's a great, may or may not. There's still two over here. Y'all, that's our Jenna's sister and her husband, our other daughter, Alicia, and John Mashburn.
All right. Cool. Well, let's begin with a word of prayer, shall we? Loving and merciful God, we just give you thanks for this opportunity that we have to come together to learn a little bit more about this Enneagram thing and to just to deepen our self-awareness so that we might go closer to you and to the person that you have created us to be. Please help us to enjoy our time together, to learn a lot, take lots of notes, and eat lots of food, and just have a great morning. In your name we pray.
Amen. You know, it's a great practice to start out with just a way of getting ourselves grounded. And so I'd like to ask you to join me in planting your feet on the floor and sitting up straight. A lot of times when I ask people to take a deep breath, this is what happens. That's not a very deep breath. The chest goes up. You know it's a really deep breath when your belly goes out. Everybody know about that? That's a great way to just calm your body. And it's something that I think is going to help me right now, because I got to say, I am nervous-sided. So let's just, get the feet on the floor. And if you'll just inhale slowly, let's say to a count of about 6, and then hold. So inhale, hold, and then exhale through your mouth. And again. All right. Thanks. So how many of you are familiar at all with the Enneagram? Okay. Wow. This is going to be fun. There aren't that many who know about this. So we thought we'd start out talking a little bit about it. The history of it is, well, it borrows from ancient traditions, I would say. And we don't know the exact origins. But there's nothing in the Enneagram that in any way interferes with our faith. Sometimes people have heard things. There's some dumb videos on YouTube that talk about it being something weird. And you look at the symbol, and your first impulse might be associating it with something that just looks really strange and maybe even like it's not from God. Anybody on that? Like when you see this symbol? But the symbol was actually developed by a man named George Gurdjieff, who was a Russian Greek, kind of a real inquisitive man that studied a lot of different religious traditions, and came up in the early 20th century with an idea about, he realized that he would travel to this country, and maybe the monks there were, all about the heart. And maybe he would go to another country and study, and that religious tradition or sect would be more about the body. And another was about the heart or the head, a more intellectual kind of faith. And so what he started thinking is, man, there's got to be more. What if it all came together? What if we integrated heart and mind and body? And even to the point that they merge so much that it's like a fourth way. That's an expression that he used to find the fourth way. And from there, this began to spread a little bit. And then the biggest person who kind of took the spiritual aspect and combined it with the psychological aspect of the Enneagram was a man named Oscar Ichazo, who was, I think, born in Bolivia, raised in Peru, or the opposite. I don't remember which. But he identified a lot of different characteristics. It's, of course, all these personality typing systems have their own characteristics. They're pointing you to, these are your traits. It's external. But what the Enneagram did is it went to the internal motivation, not just what we do, not just how we show up in the world, but really why we do what we do. And not only that, but how to get beyond that, how to learn how to release patterns and habits and ways of dealing with things, sometimes very instinctively, so that we can grow and so that we can actually become more attuned with God. So there's a lot going on in this system already, and then Naranjo took it even farther. But I don't want to spend a lot of time on history. I never liked history. Do y'all like history? I don't. I just like it if it applies to me. That's what I think about. But how does this, meet me where I am? But the beauty of it is, it's so dynamic. It's so interesting because it's not just to tell you kind of who you are, but it divides personalities into core types. These are like archetypes. And I have to say, there's no one pure type, okay? Nobody is 100% this number. Amen. And, it's even more complicated because by the time we grow up and are older and maturing, we don't look much like we did when we were a teenager if we have matured, right? We've learned that life has a way of rubbing off some of our rougher edges. So when you're most in your personality is really like in late adolescence, early adulthood. Mm-hmm. This is before you have to learn how to get along. But the idea here, each number has a distinct way of seeing the world, an underlying motivation, and that really powerfully influences how they show up, how they think, how they feel, how they behave about whatever's happening, and particularly whatever's happening that they don't like, And so, so what happens, you come out of the womb and you're like this little person with an orientation, maybe. That's a God seed planted there. God designed us. It's our truest self. It's our essence. It's before we did anything right or wrong. And, it's just this pure, connected little spirit. But in being themselves, I'm jumping all over the place. Sorry about that. Let me start reading. No idea. I'm way away from my notes. And it's because I get so excited about it, So, here's the thing. It's been applied to so many areas now. It really gained popularity starting in the 70s and has really steadily picked up. It's used to help organizations learn to get along. Businesses often use an Enneagram coach for that. For, trying to find your career path in education, just to understand ourselves. We want to understand ourselves. That's the first place we need to start. So, if you do know something of the Enneagram, are you pretty sure what your type is? Can you put your hand up if you know? So, Alicia, what are you? You are a 3. John? Is that because you want to be unique? It might be something different. Okay. Christina? An 8. Okay. Anybody else know what their type is? Oh, all right. What are you, Rebecca? That's right, a 1. Yeah. A good little shortcut for remembering the 1 is they're the ones that get things done and done well. Yeah. Rebecca, by the way, is my partner in we share an office upstairs here at the church. She has her doctorate of divinity and does a lot of counseling, a lot of grief work faith-based counseling. And I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I just recently became certified here, but I've been a therapist for over 20 years. And so let's go back to where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Jenna, you know what your number is.
Yes. Just a real quick clarifying point. No number is better than any other number. They're all they're different, right? So it's not better or worse to be a 1 or a 9 or a 4 or whatever. But I am a type 9.
Mm-hmm.
Mother?
A type 9. And we're going to learn more about that, and we're going to help you.
No. Which is your
Well,
type?
what I was going to say, and I am a type 7. So we'll figure out more about that. But one thing to know is that you're not your personality. So what that means is I have characteristics. I have traits that they flow a little more easily in a particular number. So that's kind of my orientation. There's some similar core longings and the motivation and core fears. And so where we find ourselves, that's just a part of who you are. That is not the whole picture. But the thing is that once we kind of figure out what number is most like our type, we can start really noticing a lot more. We might kind of experiment because there may be some close similarities. You're going to find a little of yourself in most of the numbers probably. I mean, there's very few that there's nothing that's alike, right? Because we're not single things. We are a mixture, just like if you think of the paint swatches that they have like in a paint store. Okay, we all may be a type blue color, but if you think about like that little light sky blue or that teal or that deep, deep dark violet, there's all kinds of things. And there's so many things that go into what makes our personality. So those are some common understandings here about the Enneagram. The types are basically equally balanced between males and females. No type's better or worse. People don't change from one personality type to another unless they didn't figure it out the right way the first time. But and that's very common, by the way, to mistype yourself. We can kind of take some guesses. We always are going to feel like we want to figure out what type this person is. But the Enneagram is about that inner stuff. So we might all do the same thing for entirely different reasons. And so it gets to the motivation, and therefore it's that person is the one that needs to make the decision or figure out their type.
I mean, there are several experts who discourage even telling somebody what they think their type is because it is a journey. But, I think my mom and I, we both kind of think it's helpful to have a place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we in a little bit, we will have a very quick kind of sorting test to just to give us a place to start. But hold it loosely and just kind of see, as you learn about the numbers, if you start to feel squeamish, there's a pretty good chance we're describing your number. And I mean, because the thing is, like, the best part of us is also the worst part of us, because it's a strategy that we maybe employ in the wrong situations. But again, as we get older, we start to figure it out that these strategies are not working very well all the time. And so we will develop and grow.
Right. You notice a little finger trap there on your table. So if you would just pick that up and put your index fingers in each end. So sometimes we wonder, why do I do these things that I do over and over and over again when I don't want to? Even Paul talked about that, right? Mm-hmm. So why? Well, try to, what our impulse is to struggle with it and pull away. So try to get out of that little finger trap, and if it's a good one, which, when you buy it in bulk. It may or may not be a very good one. But if it's a good one, you're going to feel a little stuck, right? And you're like, no, I want out, I want out. But we can't really just get out by pulling at it. It was really cute. Marissa's daughter was playing with that today, and she was like, I can't get my fingers out. You know, but so what the counterintuitive mood is to allow it to be there and just kind of go toward it a bit. All right. Another thing I want to talk about in personality, how you got some ideas about how personality develops. How do you kids come out of the womb, they have kind of a temperament, don't they? Some of them are more fussy than others. Alicia could be in the playpen for hours and just entertain herself. She was so independent and happy, but... and
then there was me.
And then y'all flipped. But
and then we balanced.
That's right. The idea is about balance. It is about learning how to loosen up these patterns, because what happens is we develop these, we see our parents react to us in a different way, and we go, ooh, I need to tamp that down a bit. Of course, we don't have that kind of language, but we understand their displeasure. We don't like that feeling. It's unpleasant, and so we adapt. And the personality begins to develop because of these strategies for adapting to keep love. We all need to belong. We all need to know that, we're loved and valued and so forth. So you try to please in some ways. So that is how the personality kind of gets started. There's a little bit of nature, a little bit of nurture, environment certainly. Your levels of health is how you show up, because actually we may be very familiar with our number and recognize sometimes I'm in a lower expression of that number. There's levels of health or, relative health. So there's like an unhealthy range, an average range, and an above average range, a high range. If we're functioning at the higher level, there's a flow to it. There's a real sense of freedom and joy and excitement that, things are good. And then something happens, and we get very irritated, or we don't get our way, and we start to react. So you want to begin to notice, what is this emotional reaction here about? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I trying to do? What do I want to do? There's a lot of different Enneagram coaches. One that you may want to look at is Beth McCord. She talks about, all Enneagram types talk about a true self, that's your essence, and a false self, or your ego. This is that personality. It's not really who you are. It kind of reflects it, but it really goes to those habitual patterns where we start to develop, oh, that just worked just then. I'm going to make more jokes because Mom's laughing now. We figure out some things. And so we start doing that. But the personality is actually layers of masks, not our true self. We learn to put on this. We learn to put on that. We show up in a certain way. Meantime, we're pushing down our inner longings, and we're ignoring maybe or acting out of our fear. And we're not really conscious of a lot of these things until you start to learn more about it. So it's the self-knowledge and then self-observation. When you get triggered, notice what happens. So let me see where we are now. Oh, Beth McCord, Christian. She has what's called the gospel-centered approach to the Enneagram. Okay, so her ideas are really good, I think, because she links the true self this is the self that God created us to be. That is, we came in and God had in mind a plan and a purpose for our life, and he put certain characteristics in us, and so there's this ideal, virtuous expression of the self that God had in mind. And then sometimes, so that what Beth refers to that as the beloved child. That's a child that's very secure in the love of God, that doesn't have to earn it, that is comfortable, that is connected to God. then there is a time where they're very aligned there. The misaligned self, or the completely out of alignment self, that is your personality in its average and unhealthy range. So she calls that the wounded child. The average range is kind of the wounded child. Nobody gets through childhood unscathed, right? We all have things that teach us a lot and affect us, and there's a process of growth and learning with that. But what we begin to see is, the personality is where we're just kind of on autopilot. It's our default mode. It's the way, without thinking, we start to act and think, and kind of those knee-jerk reactions maybe. We hardly notice that, but we begin as we grow older to realize that these patterns that we developed don't really work that well all the time, and maybe they even get us into trouble. And so that's where we have kind of a spiritual awakening. We begin to look at that and try something different. Like, take George Costanza, for instance.
Every decision I've ever made in my entire life has been wrong. My life is the complete opposite of everything I want it to be. Every instinct I have in every aspect of life, be it something to wear, something to eat, it's all been wrong. Everywhere.
Tuna on toast, coleslaw, cup of coffee.
Yeah. No, wait a minute. I always have tuna on toast. Nothing's ever worked out for me with tuna on toast. I want the complete opposite of tuna on toast. Chicken salad on rye, untoasted, with a side of potato salad and a cup of tea.
Well, there's no telling what can happen from this.
Chicken salad's not the opposite of tuna. Salmon's the opposite of tuna, because salmon swim against the current, and the tuna swim with it.
Good for the tuna.
George, that woman just looked at you.
So what? What am I supposed to do?
Go talk to her.
Elaine, bald men with no jobs and no money who live with their parents don't approach strange women.
Well, here's your chance to try the opposite. Instead of tuna salad and being intimidated by women, chicken salad and going right up to them.
Yeah, I should do the opposite. I should.
If every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right.
Yes. I will do the opposite. I used to sit here and do nothing and regret it for the rest of the day. So now I will do the opposite, and I will do something. Excuse me, I couldn't help but notice that you were looking in my direction.
Oh, yes, I was. You just ordered the same exact lunch as me.
My name is George. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents.
I'm Victoria. Hi.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. That's so fun. So we begin to realize that things don't quite work the way they used to for us, and it's time to try something new. So as we grow closer to God, we begin to let go of some of our unhelpful stories and ways, patterns of thinking and feeling and acting.
I need to go find the right presentation.
The right presentation? Oh, that's what I was afraid of. I couldn't find it. This is when you do something and you keep changing it and don't change the name of the presentation. So I don't know which one is in there.
I'll be right back. I'm going to go over here and fix it.
All right. So the question is, how can we begin to find our way back to our true self? How do we learn to move closer to the image of God, to the expression that's uniquely ours in Christ? So I had a little fun thing that I just thought of the other day. Like, how do I learn from, if you think about the true self versus the false self, or the false self versus the true self, it's like my way, that's me operating in personality. That is my false self. That is my ego nature. The essence and true self, that's who God's created me to be, and when I'm functioning at a higher level of development. And I thought, wow, that sounds like my way or the high way. So a little different take on my way or the highway. But we can use the wisdom of the Enneagram and the power of the Holy Spirit to draw us closer to our truest and highest self. So where do we start? So like I said, self-knowledge, accuracy. There's a lot of tests out there. Somebody even brought one today. I'd never even seen or heard of, but many of them are free. Some you can pay for a small amount of money, maybe $20, maybe $10, maybe $12. One of the best ones that I would recommend the most is at the Enneagram Institute. It costs $12, but it gives you like an 18-page printout of your top 3 types and their different characteristics. So that's a pretty good one. The core number, or your type, is kind of like your home base, Jenna calls it, and it's kind of that default mode. But as you're starting to experiment with this, just hold it loosely, and it's going to take some self-observation to really nail it. I would say, many Enneagram teachers have misidentified themselves, and sometimes more than one type. Like Amy Wicks is one, and she is a beautiful Christian lady that has a podcast and is an Enneagram coach, and she, thought she was 2 different numbers before she landed on the one that she feels is really her number, which is the type 7. So, where are we, honey? We there yet? Should we go ahead and, we'll just go ahead with what's here. It's okay. There we go, my way or the highway. I think that's it. So let's go on to the next side. I bet you're kind of anxious, aren't you? Are you kind of eager to figure out your number? All right, so they can be divided into various groupings. I don't know. Anyway, the groupings are called triads. The Enneagram, the symbol, remember, is like a circle. That represents one, unity. And a lot of things in the Enneagram system have to do with the number 3. There's 3 of this and 3 of that and 3 of that. So they are broken into little triads. So the gut triad is, it's about doing. When someone that is in that gut triad, and you can see what those numbers are, but we'll get into it in a minute, but they take in information and have an immediate kind of reaction. Their first impulse is very instinctive, to do something, okay? And then their underlying issue, or their what they call, a passion, right, is anger. And anger takes on a lot of different forms, so depending on the type. It's hard for some types to get in touch with that anger. I'm not angry. You ever get irritated or feel like someone else is wrong? Well, okay, that's on that continuum of anger. So some people kind of stuff their anger, and some react very angrily and abruptly, and it kind of intimidates and scares people, but they're over it real quickly and move on. And some in this triad are kind of ignoring their anger, kind of repressing it, avoiding it. So the next triad there is the heart type, and the heart is about feelings. And their underlying issue that they struggle with is shame, and also image. They care a lot about what others think of them, and some, you know, kind of how they respond to it we'll talk about later, but that's their core issue. And then there's the head triad, or the thinking group, the thinking triad, and their underlying issue is fear and anxiety. That's the primary one. Now, it's not like, well, I'm in the gut triad. That doesn't mean I don't have fear sometimes. I do. Or I'm in the heart. That doesn't mean that I don't think. Remember that this is kind of a description in its purest form, but we all have all of these things at various times. So there's lots of different ways of grouping. So let's look at this.
I have to go make some copies.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe for now we can share. Or you want to? Okay.
Or we can share.
At share at the tables.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great, thank y'all. So let you know the. Oh yeah, I need to look at that one. All right. Let me pull that out to explain
Does anybody
it.
else not have one?
I don't.
Yeah, you don't.
So, and we don't have it on the screen, right? So, yeah, let's just look at this configuration of the centers of intelligence. This is, the centers of intelligence is one of the groupings that is really the most common way of thinking about your type, learning what you are. So, Enneagrams 1, the Enneagram number 1, their dominant center is doing. They're very busy. They really want to fix things. They really want to improve the world and themselves and others and, you know, everything around them. They just see, and they want to get into doing right away. And that doing is supported by feeling. They feel something. And then it's the part that is underutilized is thinking. That doesn't mean they don't think, but it's thinking kind of with a more balanced view. And so then let's look at number 2. Oh, wait, am I doing it? Okay. Number 2, they're in the feeling center of intelligence. They, you know, when something's going on, they immediately turn their attention toward this other individual or whatever and want to know how they can help. They just want to go and support. They're very in touch with their feelings a lot of times. Some feeling types are not quite as in touch, or they don't think they're very useful, and so they dismiss them. And we'll talk about that. There's also the dominant center, the one that is overly used, and the underused. I mean, the expression for that number. Those are the places where we get in trouble. The neutral one is in the middle. It's supporting the dominant type mostly. So part of the work of transformation is about learning how to bring up what's repressed. Not get rid of any of it, but we would like to see it be more balanced. Okay, so then the 3 is, you notice these little asterisks. And also on the symbol of the Enneagram, which you do have or will have soon. It's, you know, with the circle, if you remember, and then it's got like a triangle in the middle. The triangle is like, okay, at the top of the triangle is the 9, and then down on the right side would be the 3, and over here would be a 6. And that there's a relationship between all of those. Okay, but that is the ones that are the 3 and the 6 and the 9. If you look on this chart, you'll see little asterisks. So the type 3 takes in information through their feelings, but dismisses their feelings pretty quickly because they need to get stuff done. They need to solve this problem. And so they quickly switch, and they're supported by thinking and doing. What happens with feeling? Well, it kind of gets set on the back burner, and they kind of lose touch with their feelings unless they're really intentional about it. They get lost in their work. They really want to do and achieve and succeed, and so that's kind of what happens there. When we look at the 6 thinks all the time. The 6 is in the head triad. Okay, why am I jumping to that? I'm jumping because of the asterisk. So what they do is, in the head triad, they do have a thought about things, lots of thoughts, but they're not very productive kind of thoughts because they're really fear-based, and they doubt a lot. And so that kind of is not the kind of thought that they really need to have. They go into a planning mode, so they're thinking and doing, or doing and feeling. They're doing and feeling because of some threat that they feel on the inside immediately, and then push to, there must be an explanation for this. And so they externalize that. And they're looking at all these dangerous things out there in the world and things we need to worry about. And we need to know that this could go terribly wrong. And so they do a lot of, worst case scenario kind of planning to try to manage that. The 9 is their dominant center is doing, but their doing is kind of an unproductive way of doing things. What they're doing is they're feeling a dis-ease, and they begin to go about, oh man, I'm having a hard time. I am not sticking with things very well. Sorry, y'all, one of the characteristics of the type 7, I'll just tell you, is all over the place. So it's because I get really excited. Well, okay, let's jump to the activity so you can figure out something about yourself. In your folders, or hopefully very soon, there's a thing that says the wisdom of the Enneagram, and it is a little quiz. This quiz is about 70% accurate. Okay, so I don't have the directions with me right now because I think we moved those on to make copies. But what you're going to do is you're going to read the 3, thank you, honey. You're going to read the 3 paragraphs, read each one. Let's see. And you're going to try to select just one of those 3 paragraphs, the one that reflects the best. This is the group 1 paragraphs, A, B, and C. Just look at those. And you're going to look at it to reflect on your general attitudes and behaviors as they have been most of your life. Remember, if you get stuck and you think, am I like that? It's maybe because, again, life has had a way of kind of teaching us how to get along in the world, and we've adopted other ways of doing things. So think about when you were young, like really young, college age maybe. So look at the paragraphs. You won't agree with every single thing. Remember, we're a mixture, a lot of things. But pick the one that is most like you. This little quiz here, it does allow us, you don't want to overanalyze it. You want to just go with your feeling here about what's most like you. But if you really genuinely are stuck, cannot decide, you can, in one of the groupings, either group 1 or group 2, you can pick 2. But it'll really mess you up if you try to pick 2 in each. Like, remember, we have a little bit of everything, so just go with the one that suits you the most. And then, I guess on this case, just circle that letter. So I'll give you a chance to just look at that. You're going to circle one paragraph in group 1, A, B, or C. Try not to do both of them, but read all 3. No, but you could go on to group 2 if you want. It's the same thing. In group 2, go ahead and read those and pick out the one that's most like you. Is it on the slide? Is it on the slide? Okay. Okay, so if you have already gotten to the where you've read all 6 paragraphs and made your choices, is everybody ready to move? Okay, I'll give you a little more time. Are we there yet? Anybody still working on it? All right. Yes, someone is? Okay. Does that put it up there? Okay, so here's how we interpret the results of this. Your group 1, that'll be your first letter. So look for the letter that you did in group 1 and right next to it the letter that you got for group 2. And that kind of points out a basic 70% maybe accurate idea of what your primary type is. Did everybody come up with just those things? So, yes? So like, for example, if you had an A and an X, then that would be a type 7, most likely. Type 7s are upbeat, accomplished, impulsive, and we'll get into a deeper expression of that. They call it the enthusiast in some cases, and a lot of times it's called the epicure, which is a weird word, but we'll talk about that. Okay. Are there any other type 7s in the room? Yeah? Actually, I remember mine was 2. It was. All right. Again, we want to hold it loosely because as we describe each type, which we're going to do here in a sec, then we're going to, get a better idea. Does that really sound like me? Is that resonating a lot? Is it resonating on what those self-limiting things are that I do? And when it hits you there, you've probably landed on your real type. All right, so AY would be the challenger, an 8, as Christina is. Self-confident, decisive, domineering. These are, they're often called the boss. They're very good leaders. They're very strong leaders, and the healthier they are, the better leader they are. Yeah, let's do it. So we're going to start with the 8 because we start out in the center of intelligence that's called the gut or the body center. So 8s, called the boss or the challenger, have the passion of lust. Now, what's a passion? A passion is, in Christian terms, it's a sin. It's the sin. But it's not like a terrible wrongdoing kind of sin necessarily. It's a way of, our minds fixate on a particular thing. We have an emotional reaction to a certain thing. And along with that, we have a fixation, an impulse to do something, or think something, or feel something. So they're focused a lot, it says, on the passion of lust. And again, lust here, this is Enneagram terminology. It doesn't mean sexual lust necessarily.
Intensity.
It's an intensity, yeah. It's an energy that, wow, they go for whatever and that they desire. It's a desire to control their lives. 8s don't necessarily want to control others. They just don't want anybody really controlling them. So they are one of the types that is more independent, just wants to pursue the agenda that they have, and sometimes in a less healthy way, it might be like, get out of my way, if you are keeping an 8 from doing what it longs to do. So 8s are self-confident, they're decisive, they're willful, they can be confrontational. They are not afraid of calling people out. I would love it if you would explain more about the 8. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a name for that, right?
It's very difficult.
Not a very nice name.
So you're right, and we say that we have to navigate that,
Mm-hmm.
because if we're too much in the people pleasing, then we're not leading, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we are too much in the 8, which is my authentic self, then I have to navigate that everywhere I go.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Another thing about 8s is you want to have people tell you straight up. Do not beat around the bush. Right. I want to know where you stand. Right. Mm-hmm.
That's why we're not afraid of confrontation. Well, many people don't want to talk straightforward because they're afraid of hurting their feelings.
Yeah. Or if you do, by some chance, have your feelings hurt, you'll get over it. Yeah, really quickly. Move on. Yeah, it's an interesting number. So their inner critic, the message to themselves that they have told themselves that they live by, it's kind of their core philosophy. I'm good, or I'm okay, as long as I'm strong. I do not want to be vulnerable. It's very hard, and yet that's the work. That's the work. Show up with an authentic expression of who you are. It's not weakness, but it's hard to unlearn a pattern. All right. I have some other little notes about 8s. Are there any other 8s in the room? Just curious. Yeah. Did what we were just talking about, did that kind of correspond to you? Yeah, that's something I didn't really talk about, but betrayal, big. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I do see characteristics in 8 that aren't.
Were you more confrontational as a younger person? Like,
Probably. I probably was.
mm-hmm.
I don't sweat the small stuff at my age.
Right, that's right. Yeah, a lot of times what we want to ask ourselves is this how I have always been, pretty much? Or is this a thing that I've learned? Yeah, sometimes we learn, and that's how we grow. Okay, so I'm going to go on to type 9. And type 9s, Jenna's going to speak to that.
Yeah.
Hi there, Mom. Way to speak up, honey.
See, I'm learning. All right, so 9s have what's called the passion of sloth. And so again, passion, sloth, passion, sin, fixation, that kind of a thing. It's not sloth necessarily in a physical sense, but in the sense that we have a tendency to kind of fall asleep to ourselves. And so we're in that anger triad, which it might seem weird for someone who's called a peacemaker to be in an anger triad. And so the way we deal with our anger is it just kind of goes to sleep. Like we go with the flow, we go with the flow, we go with the flow, we stuff everything down, it goes to sleep, we forget it's there, and then one day, out of nowhere, it's a little bit of a self-destruct mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the important things for a 9 is just to be aware of where that anger is, and to make sure that we have appropriate channels for being able to let it vent. But it can be a very energizing force too, anger. And so it can kind of stir us to action. And so it's an important resource for us to be able to tap into. But typically we are receptive, we are reassuring, complacent, or resigned. Does that sound like me? Maybe, kinda. Not complacent? Okay, cool. I'm learning. I'm better than I used to be.
You know, I think with Jenna, before cancer, she was just starting to come into her life, to wake up, and was becoming more and more effective in her work and the way that she would show up. She was really growing. You know, and when she got so sick, I was so like, God, please. This girl has just barely, it looks like she's a little baby trying to grow up here. Let's give her more time, you know. And I'm so grateful. And since cancer, I think it really taught her so much more about not avoiding what's hard, about facing it and doing your best to show up and be helpful and stay connected and recognize when you're not at peace and do something to help yourself process and let that go on through. Yeah?
Yeah. So, kind of back up to, I think it was about 2016 is when my mom first told me about the Enneagram, and I really wish that I had known about it before I started my first position as an associate pastor in Texas, when I started working with my senior pastor. And my senior pastor was a type 8, and not the most aware of type 8s. And so, and I wasn't the most aware of type 9s either. And so there are some things that 9s do that can drive an 8 absolutely up the wall. For example, so 9s are really good at mediating conflict, as long as they're not the one in the conflict, right? If we come from outside, we can see all sides of an issue, can really, you know, understand it, kind of synthesize it, and help others to understand the other side, basically. But what that can play out in if we have a to-do list, all of our tasks might seem equally important, and so we don't always know where to begin. Or sometimes we may not know how we feel about something, and so we don't take a strong stance on it. 8s respect people who know what they believe and stand for it, right? And so for a 9, we can come off as kind of wishy-washy, right? And 8s don't tend to trust that. It can feel maybe a little manipulative, almost, like we're trying to hedge our bets, kind of. And so it's just looking back now on some of the things that I did when I was first starting as a pastor there. I can see how I kind of just kept digging a little hole for myself. And so, all we can do is learn from it, right, and grow. And so I do think that I took some of those lessons moving forward. I do know that we are just after 11 o'clock now. Does anybody feel the need for a break? No?
A quick break.
Yeah. All right, just take a couple minutes, and we'll get back into it, okay?
Sorry.
I know, but if it makes you feel better, that's why I thought, oh, maybe we should take a break.
Thank you for the hint, Mike.
Leave it to the old guy to figure it out.
Need a break.
All right. We should maybe just do a quick overview, and then we can go into this.
Okay.
That sound all right?
Or we could do it at the type.
What do you think?
Yeah.
are the books?
It depends.
Prices?
Oh, we're not selling those. That's just showing you our library.
Oh. Because I have to find the two that you gave me. I have no idea where they are.
Oh, was one of them maybe More Than Your Number by Beth McCord, I bet.
What's that?
I wondered what happened to this one book that I had.
It was that green one
And the orange?
the orange one.
Well, then I think I gave them to you.
It was that light green one and the orange one. It's the two I have.
Okay, so let's get back to the table as soon as we can. We're running low on time. I want us to get into the good stuff. Have we hit yours yet?
Nope. I'm a 10.
Write your own paragraph. I'll give you some checklists to look at too that'll help you narrow down. It is. It's your age and your growth. Okay, let's get started. So, how many type 9s do you feel like you're a type 9? Pretty sure if you're a type 9?
Yeah, maybe. Just real quick. If you would like to make sure that you get a copy of the slides, I'm going to send around this clipboard for your name and email and get that out to y'all today, okay?
Oh, in addition, we have everybody's at the end of this, whenever you are pretty sure what your number is, if you get there, or if you don't know, just put a little question mark out to the side or put the number, so that way I can kind of help connect with you with email. I'll send also, we were going to copy a resource list, but then we figured out because there were so many hyperlinks or whatever, it's better for me to email that to you for resources and tests you might take that will help you determine your type as well. So there's a lot of good recommendations, things that I've kind of put together over the years. Always more stuff coming out. Google it or go on YouTube and you'll find a whole slew of things. But some are better than others. So how many type 9s? Anybody else? A type 9 in here? Great. Over here. Yeah. If we had more time, or if you want to hang out a little bit afterwards, maybe you could gather by your number and just kind of talk about that, what it's like to be you and how this is showing up. So the type 9, they have this, again, just I wanted to, oh yeah, we said we would wait on that. So, okay, let's move on to the next slide. The last number in the gut triad is the type 1. I don't like this term because I don't think it's a fair term to say that they are a perfectionist. They like things to be very excellent and good. They will try very hard to get them to perfection, but that's such an unrealistic and high expectation to put on somebody and say, well, this is who I am, I'm this, and, Reformer, that's better. They see something and they want to change it. They want to make a difference. They have the passion of anger, but their anger is repressed. Their anger is pushed down, and it kind of comes out most of the time in kind of a resentment a little bit, irritability, but it's not okay to express your anger, so they want to be good, so they don't let it out very often.
I like to say that ones are the people who come behind you and reload the dishwasher. tend to be the ones, right? But no, it's a way of seeing the world and a way of being able to improve things and make things better. And so it's such a useful point of view to have.
The downside is sometimes they can be really critical, but what you have to realize is they are the most critical of themselves. This is like how you know you're a 1, is do you have this inner critic that is just constantly telling you, you're not good enough, that wasn't good enough, this needs to be fixed. Right. Walking in and see everything that is not right and feel this compulsion to fix it, even if it's not yours to fix. And so this is where it can get us in trouble. So they're principled. Oh my goodness, their ethics, their goodness, They're very intentional and purposeful, self-controlled. Yeah, they can be perfectionistic, but they have this the sin, the fear, the core fear is about being defective or being bad. Their core desire, of course, is to be good, and yet that voice is constantly on them. How many ones we have in here? Is that true? Does this really resonate a lot? Anybody want to make any comment about that for now? Yeah. Well, I think, that's another thing. Not to point out the obvious here, but when we get older, we learn that perfection's not possible. So this is a way that you have grown maybe to loosen up that hold on you. It's good enough. By the way, in counseling, I never say it's good enough to a 1. I say it's great enough. It feels better. It's great enough. Doesn't that feel better to hear? Yeah. All right, the inner critic. I'm okay, I'm good if I do what's right. So moving on to the next triad grouping. The type 2. This is the feeling triad. These are the sweetest people. The helpers, the givers. They just naturally go toward anyone that needs help. And they have this passion of pride because they kind of are telling themselves that they don't need help. They ignore their own needs and focus their attention on other people and how they can help. And they dismiss those needs because, I'm fine, I'm good. All right. They have the desire, though. It's also a hidden desire to be needed or loved. So what they often are asleep to is that underlying motivation of, I'll do anything if you'll just love me. I will go to the ends of the world if you just love me. And so that's an easy way to forget yourself. If you try to go so much toward the other person that you lose yourself, right? So they can be very generous, usually are, with time, money, whatever. You're having a party, what can I bring? It's always like that. It's, what can I do? What can I bring? Demonstrative, affectionate, people-pleasing, that's the one that makes you kind of cringe. Do I just try to, go overboard to be a people pleaser? They can be very possessive. Ooh, one thing about them too is they can be real mama bearish about their kids. Their basic fear is being unworthy or of being loved. And their inner critic tells them, I'm good or okay if I'm loved and accepted by others. So let's look at the next. Oh, what? Oh, who are the type 2s in the room?
All right.
People that are, always going and helping. This reminds me, I needed to bring up with the type 8 that is, what were we just talking about? It was, right, the gender identification. This is a problem for type 8s because women are conditioned. A lot of times we think we're type 2s because, especially in older generations, that's how we were taught. Women are there to serve. Women put their own needs last. They do not take the last piece of chicken or the last cookie. It would be terrible, unthinkable. You would be a very bad person if you did that. So, we're just kind of conditioned in that way. And some of us, we didn't get that lesson very well, so escaped that one myself. But anyway, expectations do play a role. Okay, so let's talk about 3s. This is weird. 3s have the passion of deceit. What does that even mean? Or do they lie? Are they dishonest? No, that's not what it means. It means that they kind of fool themselves. They start to believe that their success and achievement is who they really are. And so that's a way, again, how I show up. What I do, I'm going to put on a performance. I'm going to show you how great I am. And I start to believe my own press about that, right? So they have the desire to feel valuable and successful. It doesn't mean necessarily monetarily, but it's that sense of accomplishment, of a job well done. They can be workaholics. Threes are very adaptable. In other words, they come in, they read the room, they see what people need and want, and they are able to shapeshift and give it to them. They are the people that are so admired in our society. We are a type 3 society in America. There are certain cities that are more type 3-ish, like Dallas. I don't know much about South Carolina. I really don't, so I don't know what it would be here. But they're excelling, they're driven. They can just work forever to make things the way they want them to be and to make them look good. Yeah. Yeah, many are, for sure. I mean, how would they get elected if they didn't shapeshift and tell people what they wanted to hear? Yeah. Basic fear, being worthless without inherent value. And inner critic, I'm good or I'm okay if I'm successful. What else? So type 4 is also in the feeling triad. Now, fours are kind of a unique breed. They're a very creative type. They have the passion of envy. That doesn't mean that they're jealous. It just means they always have this sense that somehow they're missing something. They see it in other people. They don't resent that others have it, but they want that too, and so they dwell a lot on that. They always feel kind of like they're outside looking at all these things that are happening with others and being just envious of that. They want it too. They find themselves, the desire to find themselves, they really are very introspective, and to find significance. Adderall's wearing off, I guess. I'm just kidding. Fours are expressive, dramatic. Their moods can flip very easily. I see a lot of fours as a counselor because they're so into their feelings, and their feelings come and go like in an hour. They might experience 5 or 6 different emotions very strongly. And the thing is, like, if they're really they want to go to the very high end of their emotions and woohoo, they can be real excited, or the very low depths and stick with it. They're self-absorbed sometimes, temperamental. They're creatives. Basic fear is being without identity or personal significance. They like that sense of being unique. And their inner critic, I'm okay and I'm good if I'm true to myself. Authenticity is very important, and they can see through people very easily. How many fours in the room? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Fours do tend to be a little bit melancholy on that side of things. Often because they just feel like they're missing something. Oops. Okay, where are we next? So we'll now move on to the next triad, the head triad, the type 5. I found in my work with other Enneagram folks that 5s seem to be not very common, at least the ones that are they're not taking the classes and stuff. But you can't wait till we get to type 7, right? Why is she like this? It's making her nervous. That's all right. 5s have the passion of avarice. Okay, they're not selfish, but they do have a way of protecting and, their bubble, their space. They have the desire to be capable and competent. What my coach would say is they want to be well-resourced. They want to face the world prepared, and they will spend a lot of time digging in for the deep research and stuff. They're very perceptive. They are also, like it says, not only the investigator, but the observer. They tend to kind of sit back and observe, taking it in. They don't overreact much. They're very observant, innovative. They can come up with interesting things and new ways of doing things based on synthesizing a lot of information that they've absorbed. They're a little secretive. They really value privacy. Don't want to intrude in their physical space, and you don't want to pry into their emotional life either. And they tend to isolate. They have a basic fear, being helpless, useless, or incompetent. And they're good or okay if they master something. It's funny because 5s do tend to be very quiet until you hit on a topic of interest to them. And then you cannot break away. They're like, somebody I can talk to about this, they're all over it. Yeah.
It's pretty common to see 5s in academic fields, especially those who get PhDs. All right, so that master something, so they can become almost a little too specialized sometimes. But very, very useful. They're probably the most neutral of the types. So if you have a judge, it's generally good for them to be like a 5, and just kind of waiting to get all the information and then make a decision. 6.
Well, first, how many 5s in the room? Yeah?
5. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I thought you had said you were a 1, but you're resonating also. A 1 and a 5. Okay. We'll want to look at that and see which would be more like your primary type, the core type. We do have a little of everything in us, and that's fine. You'll often get some types confused about which one it is. There's a lot of resources out there to help you determine that. But 5s, yeah, we need them.
All right, ready?
All right. The last number that we have here in the feeling triad, no, in the head triad, I'm sorry, is the loyalist, the questioner, the type 6.
And then we have 7.
Yes, it's not the last.
It's the second one.
Thank you, Jenna.
Just want to make sure you don't forget yourself.
Okay. This is just getting downright embarrassing to me now, but anyway, I can handle it. I like to laugh. I can laugh at myself. I did manage to take a nap last night. I went to bed about 3:30, so that's just, I go to 1 whenever I'm stressed, and that's what I do. I work. Want to make it better, a little better, and then I put too much in, and it disappears so fast. So anyway, 6s, they have the passion of fear. It's more like an anxiety and the desire to have security and support. Interestingly, there's probably the most common counter types among the 6. It shows up, and it's like the opposite. So 6s tend to kind of run away from their fears or do super hyper planning of A, if A happens, B, all the worst case scenario planning. They also look to others for security and support, or to an authority. This could be the Bible. Like my college roommate is a type 6, my best friend for so many years, and she will do deep dives into the Bible. That's her authority. She can trust it, and she relies on that, and she doesn't want anybody messing with that gray area. It's very important to her. 6s, they're engaging, they're responsible, they're anxious, worry about a lot of things. They're suspicious. They don't just trust what they see in a person right away. They take more time to investigate, and they can be kind of cynical and skeptical. You have to really gain their trust, but man, once you do, they're the most loyal people ever. All right, basic fear is being without support and guidance. It's actually, being not safe, too. Their inner critic, I'm good, I'm okay, as long as I know what's expected of me. Just tell me where I stand. One of the things 6s tend to do is ask a lot of questions and play that kind of, what's the word?
Devil's advocate?
Devil's advocate, yeah. And, they're worrying about things. They want to make sure it's going to come off right. And we need to trust that and answer those questions patiently. That will help us in getting along with the 6. They feel very dismissed a lot of times. People start rolling their eyes. If they're always asking this or seeing what else could go wrong, and people start getting real dismissive sometimes of them. but they're valuable assets.
Yeah, I like to say sixes are the people who keep us alive, because they're the ones who really try to think through possible outcomes and to have a plan for any possibility, pretty much. So if they're the kind of people who would have a go bag, like if an emergency comes up. So they like to be prepared, very, very Boy Scout.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Excellent. Any sixes in the room?
Any sixes?
Yeah, Jill?
Okay. Or? I also think sixes are one of the the hardest to type. Like, cause some of the other types, they can be very recognizable in a lot of ways, but sixes are, I don't know, they just play things close to the vest, maybe.
Well, they look kind of two-ish sometimes, and they look kind of one-ish sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah, it is hard, but it's up to them to figure out what they are. So,
we ready?
Type 7, last. Okay, the enthusiast, the adventurer, also the epicure is another term. Sevens have the passion of gluttony. Now, gluttony, golly. All right, it's true. No, this one's not. Gluttony in the sense that not quite so much necessarily about food, although food can be definitely something, because what sevens do is they just want, if it's good, they want more. Mm-hmm. They just want more of whatever's good. Mm-hmm. Whatever makes them happy, whatever makes them feel good.
You like to be where the action is?
They definitely do. They like to be, early on anyway, the life of the party. I used to be that way. I don't think I'm that way so much anymore, but, I don't have to be the center of attention. I used to kind of crave that. Mm-hmm. And as far as gluttony goes, there was a time in my life I weighed 232 pounds, y'all. So, my overeating, early on in my life, it was like other substances that I used excessively, and it was the 70s, what can I say? And then, they're just kind of up for whatever and don't really think through the consequences very often. They're very impulsive. They tend to maybe have ADHD. Spontaneous. They're versatile in that they have many, many interests. That's another aspect where gluttony shows up. They have a lot of things they're interested in, and they want to develop those things, and they have great ideas. But if they get bored, they just kind of forget about it. And so you might say they were the master of, none. What's the first part of that expression? Jack of all trades, master of none. And so it's really a good thing for sevens to get into a deeper dive about something that interests them. Acquisitive means that they're consumers. They consume a lot. Whatever looks interesting and great, and they want to buy that, or they want to do this, and they consume a lot, but they never digest. They don't learn unless they learn how to stop and pause and savor what is. They're very future-oriented, and they can be very scattered. They fear, it's an interesting fear, being deprived or trapped in pain. They don't like being bored. Y'all, when COVID hit, and it was at the same time, like 2 months later, that Jenna was diagnosed with cancer. So we had to go into a real 2-year process of hunkering down. And if I hadn't known about the Enneagram before and done some spiritual practices, I wouldn't have survived that. It was the most boring, awful, hard thing to sit with your daughter being that sick and not being able to get out and go enjoy some life that's out there. So that was a tough time, but it did teach me a lot. And I was thankful. Any other sevens? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just ended out the summary.
Mm-mm. That's another aspect of the Enneagram that I wish we had more time to explain. But if you notice these lines that go, you see? The lines that go to these different places. You see where the arrows are. So each number has what we call resource points. I'm glad you asked this question because it's one of my favorite things to talk about too. So another way of looking at the Enneagram is we are not just one thing, remember? We are many things, but we have some numbers that we identify with a little more and that we can use to our advantage. So let's look at, first of all, the wings. A wing is whatever number is on each side of your number. So if you find your type, like for example, the type 9, there's an 8 wing and there's a 1 wing. You aren't going to be a type 9 with a 5 wing. That doesn't work. The wings are just what's on each side. Okay? And those traits blend in with your numbers in a way that helps you be more balanced, that is a good resource for you to stretch and grow beyond just your basic personality, right? So we want to access those. The wings are not quite as important, though, as the arrows, the way the arrows go. So this is how you show up when you get to, like, let's say I'm a type 7, and I'm in my least healthy state of being a type 7. I'm very, very stressed out. Where do I go? I go to type 1. That doesn't mean I become a type 1, but what I do is I take on some characteristics of the 1, and if I'm in that low state, I'm choosing those ones that aren't as healthy. Kind of make a lateral move over there, and boy, I'm just going to really be more critical. Sometimes that shows up in the weirdest ways, and I really don't like it because I rarely get upset, but then when I do, I'm so aggressive and mean and reactive, and it's like I'm just like, I can't stand this thing, you know, because it's not right, it's wrong, and I just want to, but there's a gift with the 1. You can actually access either side or anywhere along the continuum. So if you are more aware, I can go to the higher side of 1. I can be very ethical in my behavior. I do not choose to lie or steal or get drunk or whatever. I don't do that. I don't do it because I'm leaning into that 1 that's helping me behave better because I want to do the right thing. And that helps me. I want to work hard and make things better. That's a good trait. I love that Rebecca's my partner because she teaches me a lot about that. Now, the line where you see the arrow headed in a different direction, it goes to 5. And 5, that's your growth point. It is where you really change a lot and become more, for me, a 5, I'm going to be more quiet and observant. I'm not going to need to be the center of attention. I'm going to be more settled. I'm going to be more calm. I'm going to be able to not judge quite so quickly and, jump into whatever sounds good. I'm going to evaluate things better. So this is a way it helps me. So if you look and you want to find out more about that, your resource points are a great place to look. So type in on the, look for what does it mean? What are my resource points or what are my stress and growth points? And find out more about those so that when you are observing yourself, you can tell right away where your energy and attention's going. Have you just made a flip over into this other side? Is it a good one? Is it a healthier one? I shouldn't say good and bad, but is it a healthier movement or is it one that's hindering you and limiting you even more? It's like a doubling down. The 5 for me helps me settle and sit with discomfort because what the 7 wants to do, their MO is outrun and outfun whatever's bothering you. Whatever's out there, just go, either run as far away from it as you can or distract yourself with a lot of fun activities, adventures, or books, or whatever it is that you're interested in. Okay. So that, Jenna, do you want to talk about your resource points and how that shows up for you? What's my busy bee doing over here?
Sorting. Anyway, okay, so yeah, as a type 9, I'm at the top there. The shape between 3, 6, and 9 is a very nice and easy shape. It's just a triangle, right? And so it makes it pretty easy for us to remember where we go. So in stress, I will kind of take on some qualities of a 6. I might become a little more skeptical of things. I might become a lot more anxious. And there was a time in my life when I started having panic attacks because of the level of anxiety that I was feeling. Fortunately, that's in the past. But when I feel comfortable, when I feel secure, I go on to type 3. And we like to kind of call it energy, right? So like a 3 energy. And so I see it most often when I'm preaching or when I know what I'm saying and I feel confident in it. Then I can kind of take on that 3 energy and use it to hopefully connect with people, to be a good leader. So yeah.
I love seeing this because I think those of you that know Jenna know she's no longer asleep to her life.
Mm-hmm.
She is really flowing in who she is and her ability to connect and share and help others. That is also a 3 quality that she has. The first time we heard her preach, we were like, she's so quiet most of the time. She hardly ever talks. And then the depth and everything. It was just awesome. And the confidence. And not even using notes sometimes. I'm just like, wow. I don't use notes either, but I need them more than I like to think. Anyway, so what about 3s? Did I ask about 2s? I did. And what about 3s? And what about 4s, 5s? Did I skip anybody that we've covered so far? Did I skip 6? 3s? I didn't ask for how many 3s. How many 3s? My daughter and how about that? Yeah. Yeah.
Just so a quick word. So like 3s, 7s, and 8s tend to have the most energy of any of the types. They're go-getters. They're they go after things.
Their minds.
Yeah, fantastic leaders. The leaders of most large churches tend to be 3s and 7s, interestingly enough. Yeah.
Because they get good people to take care of all those other details. So, yeah.
But I mean, because they have a kind of charm that attracts people. And so, yeah. Another name for 3 is, you might see, is the motivator. So, my mom always complains that my sister knows how to get me to do stuff for her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, she knows how to ask, I guess.
Get it on the calendar ahead of time, too. That helps. Yeah, no, that's really a beautiful thing to see the dynamic between these 2 girls. All right.
Yeah, so if there's any kind of confusion about, what type you are, it's generally useful to kind of look at those stress and security numbers because where you have a line too, because those can really kind of help you to see more clearly. So just thinking, where do I go? What kind of energy do I take on when I'm around people who I know love me and I'm not worried about, being judged or anything like that, or when I'm talking about a subject that I know, and where do I go when I start to feel stressed? How does that come out? And so just to kind of reflect on that. And so that's why the Enneagram requires a lot of self-observation, because an observation without judgment too. It's just like, oh, I see myself kind of going to this energy. I should maybe take a step back and
that
reflect.
So that leads us to mindfulness. Yeah. This is a very important skill that we can develop. And mindfulness, an approach that's mindful, means that you get present to right here, right now. A lot of times there's some types that go over the past and rehearse the past a lot. There's other types that go toward the future, but we don't have any ability to influence anything, change anything about that. What we need is to be able to get present and to look at what is happening right here, right now, and to hopefully look at it without judgment. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to struggle to get rid of these unpleasant things. In fact, it's just like that little finger trap. You want to go toward those things with curiosity. So you hold it very curious, like, what's happening right now? I just noticed that I was having the thought that. This is a way of detaching from our thoughts. This is a very important skill, too, in counseling. Like, think of it, the head type is always thinking. It can be like the ND 500 in your head. Stop and notice during the day at different times, what am I thinking?
That's the last of the handouts, by the way.
What am I, and then check in too. Like, what's the story? Is it even true? What's the language that I'm using? All of those are kind of head things that are going on. Then you also want to look at the emotion. And I gave you guys a feeling wheel because so often people are like, mad, sad, glad, whatever, I don't know. I don't know what I'm feeling. There are a lot of people that don't have the right word, but this can help you find a word that really expresses more what's going on in your heart. Checking in there. Are you hurting? Are you sad? Is it like a loneliness? Is it grief? Is it reminiscing about something? Is it a feeling that you're missing out on something? So learning how to really look at the emotions, the emotional reactivity is a clue. I'm slipping into my personality more and more as I get more reactive. Loosen it up. Get curious. Look inward. Okay, then the other thing is, check in with your body. And that's actually usually the first place to start. It is the first place to start because when our brain is triggered in the limbic system, the amygdala is running on overtime. All these chemicals are going through you. It's that fight, flight, freeze mode. So you're stuck there. You cannot get to logic and reasoning, which is in your frontal lobe, your executive functioning. It will not happen unless you calm your body first. Then, this is how we can find a way of integrating whatever we repress, we want to bring up to our awareness. We want to wake up to it and welcome it with kindness and self-compassion. So I have copied a practice from Tara Brach, who is a meditation teacher and formerly a psychotherapist. I love her stuff. Her voice is the most soothing you ever will find. And she's just real gentle and authentic and amazing. But this is a little acronym to help you move through. So when we have information, okay, we know ourselves a little bit about our number today. We want to start observing, and that's very important, and using mindfulness to do that. But the next thing is to be able to balance out and to nurture and to meet ourselves where we are. You discover this thing, and this is how we move along the path. We want to ask, God, what's wrong? What am I doing? Let God's wisdom guide you. But you'll find that it really is this intersection. Why don't we just look at this? I'd like you to think about rain as it's this way of bringing mindfulness and compassion to yourself. Whenever you are struggling with emotional difficulty, you can also do it when you're happy. You can start practicing before anything's wrong so that it's available to you when you are finding that you are reacting and in your personality and kind of doing some damage out there or limiting yourself. So tuning in. So what does the R stand for? Recognize. It's like you stop. Someone told me one time, it's the power of the pause. Stop and notice. Recognize what is going on. What am I telling myself? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? Identify all of that. And don't struggle to get free of it right away. Sit with it a minute. So that's where the A comes in, that experience of acknowledging that that's there, allowing it to be there. It's not a sin to be feeling these things. If you don't act on every thought that you have, hopefully it's not a sin. It's just, this is coming up for me right now. I'm really mad at this person. I really want to knock their block off maybe. Whoa, that's not like me. What's going on? What am I telling myself? What am I feeling? So you allow it, you welcome it. Okay, this belongs. Right now it's just telling me something. Our negative traits are really the personality's best effort to solve a problem. To recognize there is a problem, get its needs met, however it knows, but it doesn't know the right way. But allow it to be there and have a voice. It'll help you figure it out and then loosen up. You want to investigate with interest and care and curiosity, gentleness, not with the inner critic going overtime, but just being very kind as you would speak to a friend. And where's this, if I'm feeling this ugly emotion, where's it showing up in my body? Tuning into all of those things. So these are some practices you can actually take on. And the last step is the N, and it's also called non-identification, but nurture with self-compassion. Oh, yes, I see that. I understand that you're really wanting to get my attention. This didn't feel right to you. You're hurting right now. We're here. We're going to get through it. You know, what would God say to me? That's another way of nurturing ourselves. Like, God is so good and gracious to us. He'll meet us right where we are. And not like you're a bad kid for having that thought or that feeling. Very gentle. So, allowing it, and this kind of gives more information, and I would encourage you all to really practice that as a tool. You know, when I talked about the body, I want to give you just a couple of easy things to do to calm the body, because that is really where we do need to start. Just like the body is, our physical stuff is what develops first in life. So, some quick things. There are some self-calming techniques. Breathing, we did earlier. That's helpful. And there are lots of ways to breathe. Go on there. Like, what is square breathing? What does that mean? Look at it. It's interesting. Experiment with the things that work for you. Take your hands and put them in front of your face. And then cross your thumbs. Okay? With little kids, put it on your chest. Just notice what's happening there. Just putting your hand on your chest. What does that feel like? Feels like a hug. It's kind of soothing. It's warm. Start gently tapping one and then the other. It's a way of regulating. We get dysregulated when we're in that fight, flight, or freeze. Take a deep breath. Notice what this is feeling like. You can get a little faster with it if you want. But that is a dual stimulation, like a way of regulating. You can tap on your legs. When we get grounded in our body, we can put our feet down, again, sitting up straight, and go through a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things I see. Look around the room. What do you see? Just kind of, It's really hard to force yourself into that when you're overloaded, but if you do, it'll help. It helps with panic attacks and other things too. Just taking your mind and putting it on a different track. What do I see? What can I touch? Feel the texture on the chair or on your leg. Feel the way one part of your body feels when it touches the other. What do I hear? Let's just stop the noise and tune in. Ooh. Anybody hearing something that you hadn't been aware of at all? Do you hear kind of a ringing? I hear kind of a ringing. You might hear the air conditioner vent. You might hear the fan. You might hear the traffic, and you have not been aware of any of it. So it's tuning in. What do I smell? That's a weird one. Hopefully it's a good smell. You might want to light a candle or something. Smell that. Yeah. What do I taste? Now that's kind of also different because it may not be a very clear thing right away. If you want, you could see if you're sweating by just touching your tongue to your skin. Oh, salty. Yeah, I sweated. I had coffee. I've still got that taste in my mouth, etc. Noticing that, then, all of a sudden you're here. You're there. So there are so many, many aspects of the Enneagram for us to explore. I am here if you want to know more, if you need help as help finding your type. I am certified Enneagram coach and would love to help you in that process. I want to offer some additional classes. They may cost a little bit, not very much, but if you are interested, and goodness to God, I hope you are, not so I can earn some money, but I hope you are because it's so life-changing. It really is. And we'll be offering some things, either a study of some kind with a program, which I have a few of, or a book, or maybe I'll just develop some other things based on what we want to look at. So let me know if you're interested. Before you leave today, I would really love it if you find that sign-in sheet and put what number you think you are, or a question mark if you don't know, and write those couple of questions. And we will send copies of the things that we need. Oh, you might want to just look at books. They're not for sale. These are, Jenna and I kind of both do a lot of deep diving into the Enneagram. So we have some of the same books, and we have a lot of different ones, and a massive collection back there. You might see one that you really love. One that I would recommend more than anything else is by Beatrice Chestnut. It's in the middle of the table there. It's colorful. Do you see that? The Enneagram Guide to Waking Up. Beatrice Chestnut and Oranio Pais are wonderful. But that tells you spiritual growth path, what kind of things to watch for, all of these things and it's in very easy to understand terms. There are other books that she's written that are not so easy, very much more academic, but really helpful. It's also on Audible. There are podcasts, a ton of them. Top recommendations would be The Art of Growth and Enneagram 2.0. The Art of Growth, y'all, that's my teachers that I have loved working with. Beth McCord has the Christian one. It's called Your Enneagram Coach. You have any other recommendations?
Not necessarily for books, but I do recommend that they go online and do the test that way too. And you've given us so much information today, and knowledge is power, and it's not to be used as a weapon.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Christina.
You guys shared so much, first, so did I, okay, and I live in this community, but I mean, and you guys shared so many personal things, and I wouldn't want somebody to point a finger and say, oh, now I know why you are. No,
Right. Don't say, oh, you're such a 7 or you're such an 8.
I mean, it's not a good thing to do, and it's just like confidentiality, what people share in here or at your table is private. I mean, it's personal. It's vulnerable. See, an 8 can be vulnerable. That's the only thing.
And 3s can too.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, if you go on Amazon, you could get each book of all of the 1s through 9 individually. They're reasonably priced, and it's more to learn more about yourself than it is about pointing fingers.
Yeah. If all we do is stick with our number, we have not grown a bit. It's like every other little personality typing system. That's not who you are. It's part of you, but it's a way of seeing and moving through the world. Okay, but how can we get better at who we are? How can we live in alignment as a beloved child of God versus in misalignment as a wounded child, or even in terrible out of alignment as an orphaned child? So we want to keep that connection with God and grow ever closer to Him. I hope that you've enjoyed this time, and if you do have any questions, I'll stick around. I'm happy to talk with you. Thank you.
Awesome. Please help yourself to some more food, and if you want to help us get this room set back up for worship tomorrow,